Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Welcome to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeff Malanoff, and with me, Marc Sousa. And today we're going to be talking about college football. But first, we're going to talk about Week 4 matchups and see how that affected anybody and any momentum that's been happening. Then we're going to go on to the college football, talk about the top games there. And then in the third segment, we're going to be talking about how other quarterbacks and how the Cinderella stories are kind of over at the moment and how momentum is a huge part in the game. And in the fourth segment, we'll talk about whatever else is there in the news. But first, we'll talk about the Week 4 matchups. Marc, what was your favorite Week 4 matchup, if I had to ask you? We'll go from there.
I'll say Bengals beating the Falcons 37-36. It was a great game, very exciting, lots of points, and a great ending. So I think that was what stood out to me as the game of Sunday.
Yeah, it was a great ending with A.J. Green's touchdown grab at the end of the game. Andy Dalton had 29 of 41 with 337 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Matt Ryan himself had 419 yards and 3 touchdowns and no picks, but they ended just short of the mark. But, yeah, you're right. It was a good game. It was a good game throughout, and the Bengals managed to hold on to that win at the end. Looking at the other games, the 49ers lost to the Chargers 29-27. This is the first game without Jimmy Garoppolo this season. C.J. Beathard is the new starter now, who threw 298 yards, with 2 touchdowns and 2 picks. Their running game was very rough, but the Chargers had Melvin Gordon, who went off with 15 attempts for 104 yards, and this was a game for the Chargers to win.
Yeah, and, I thought it was going to be easier for the Chargers. I think the fans of their team would have expected them to take care of business in an easier sense, but early on in the game, first drive, I believe, Rivers throws a pick 6, so anytime that you go down 7 points right away, the underdog in the game has some momentum. It could definitely be a dogfight, and that's what we saw. We saw the Chargers getting the W, but not a very clean game for them. They ultimately took care of business at the end, but not the greatest of games by the Chargers.
Right. And going into the other games, we'll talk about the not so interesting games and go to the interesting ones. Packers being the Bills 22-0. Nothing really happened there. I mean, Josh Allen kind of was struggling for the whole game. Came off the Minnesota game feeling confident. Just went off the rails on this one. I had really nothing to say about this game. Do you?
Just an ugly game.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, Josh Allen running for his life. Josh Allen throwing the ball away. Josh Allen taking sacks. The Packers doing enough to score some points. And
Aaron Rodgers even struggled with 22 of 40 passing. Yeah, he almost threw over 300 yards, but a touchdown and a pick. But going into the another game that really kind of lackluster was the Seahawks and Cardinals that ended 2017 on a last-second field goal from Sebastian Janikowski. But both quarterbacks, Josh Rosen and Russell Wilson, threw for under 200 yards. Only 1 touchdown between them. David Johnson had 22 attempts for 71 yards and a touchdown. Not a lot to go on in this game.
Yeah, for me, the lasting impression of this game is Earl Thomas breaking his leg. At the end, the last member of the Legion of Boom looks like he'll be done as a Seahawks player, considering that he's a free agent after this year, and he just broke his leg, so I think he'll be put on IR.
He also gave a one-finger salute to his teammates. I'm not sure who he was aiming for. Was he aiming for the coaches, or was he aiming for players? Who do you think he was aiming for?
I don't know. Was he telling somebody that they were number one?
No, absolutely not. But I'm not sure who he was aiming that finger to. Was it to coaching? Was it to the ownership? Was it to the players? It was kind of vague. Maybe it was to the entire team.
Yeah, it is kind of weird because if it is, I mean, obviously, I think we can all assume that it's over his contract dispute. He wanted to be paid. He wanted a long-term deal. He didn't get one, and now
wanted to be traded and got nothing.
Right, and now he's on a broken leg heading into a free agent year, which will definitely affect his next contract. And you would assume
he's blaming them for his injury almost.
Yeah, you would assume that he's giving that one finger salute to upper management, but they're not on the sideline most of the time.
Well,
so
some are.
Sometimes, yeah, you'll see the GM down there on the sideline.
I'm
not sure.
Maybe that was the GM. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe the GM was down there because I wouldn't see him doing that to his teammates or to Pete Carroll. But who knows? I'm not sure.
We really don't know the whole story of what happens behind the scenes.
Guess we'll hear from him at some point.
Or he's kind of a guy that keeps quiet, so maybe not. But going into the other games, Alvin Kamara and the Saints just had their way with the Giants 33-18. Kamara just had another career day, 19 attempts, 134 yards rushing with 3 touchdowns. Brady didn't even throw a touchdown. It was all Kamara this entire game, and he's the one that really led this team to victory.
It's one of those things where when we look back at drafts, we're going to look back and say, why wasn't Alvin Kamara the number 1 pick in the year that he came out? Because, what was he, a third-round draft pick last year? And
was it last year only?
Yeah, he sat behind Ingram and Adrian
Well, Ingram
Peterson.
had a good year, too. He's injured, granted. When he comes back, that's going to be a very deadly 1-2 punch.
Yeah, I think he comes back this week 5.
He was drafted in the 3rd round, 67th overall out of Tennessee. And I think that's one of the reasons he wasn't really looked up because he was picked from Tennessee, who has not been a very...
And if I remember correctly, he went to Alabama and then transferred to Tennessee. And at one point, they had a backfield of Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara. There's a couple other names that I know that
he
are
did
notable.
redshirt as a true freshman, and he did have knee surgery during his time there.
It just seems like when he gets the ball, he's going to score. And it really doesn't matter if it's a swing pass. It doesn't matter if it's a draw. It doesn't matter if it's an inside run and outside run. We're just all watching Alvin Kamara run around defenses who have not figured out a way to stop him. Yeah.
Well, he's definitely he's up there as the top 3 running back in the league. This performance doesn't improve that statement. Going into another interesting game, the Browns and the Raiders. Raiders took it 45-42 in overtime. The Browns had the lead through most, if not the entire game, into the last second touchdown and field goal or 2-point conversion to tie it, and then it went into a little out of hand in the overtime, and the Browns just lost this game. I don't think the Raiders won. I think the Browns just lost it.
Yeah, you have an 8-point lead. I know it's on the road, but you basically don't. You can do anything but give up a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. You can even give up a touchdown and still come away with the win. But yes, the Cleveland Browns do Cleveland Browns things, and they not only get scored on, but they give up the 2-point conversion. And it actually is funny. I thought that game about halfway through the overtime, I thought we were going to see another tie, which
I thought so too.
Which would have been quite entertaining to see a team with 2 ties.
That would have been interesting to say the least. But in that game, what really stuck out to me was the roughing the passer call on Mayfield, and he kind of got run into just a little bit, and they called the roughing the passer. What are your thoughts on the roughing the passer calls that have been happening?
I mean, I think my thoughts on that resemble most of every other NFL fan's thoughts on that, and it's that we're erring on the side of caution way too far. I mean, I get it. You want to protect these franchise quarterbacks. Nobody wants to see starters get injured. It affects the product on the field. It affects fans going to games. It's not fun to watch second and third string quarterbacks play in the NFL, but at some point you got to let players play. Defensive players already have the rules kind of stacked against them, and it just seems like it's more and more tougher to play defense. And we're seeing these borderline hits and 15-yard penalties for first downs are critical. I mean, those penalties lead to points most of the time. Like, it doesn't matter where you are on the field. If the opposing offense is on their own 30-yard line and you get a roughing the passer, you automatically put them in the middle of the field of the first down. I'd be interested in seeing statistics to how many times a roughing the passer call actually leads to higher expected points for that offense currently on the field.
Yeah, true. It does definitely play a factor in how you play defense on that side of the ball and tackling the quarterback. I feel bad for these type of guys that are being so cautious in this kind of thing, but I would definitely put roughing the passer as a thing that should be less strict at the moment because it's getting a little ridiculous. But anyways, we're just gonna move on to the actual actual games. The Seahawks, we talked about that one. Lions and Cowboys was a last second field goal for the Cowboys.
It's a good game.
They beat the Lions. It was a good game, and I think overall it was it was close into the end. When looking at Matt Stafford, he had 24-30 passing. For 307 yards, 10 yards average, and 2 touchdowns. And then you looked at Prescott, who had 17-27, 255 yards, and 2 touchdowns. This was but I think the real name of the game was Ezekiel Elliott, who had 25 attempts for 152 yards. Didn't have a touchdown, but he did average 6 yards a carry, and that was pretty impressive in this game.
Yeah, big game for him. Very nice to see him get involved in the passing game. The Cowboys could use a little bit more, I think, play designs to throw to their backs because they have a limited receiving core. They have some guys like Allen Hurns that are decent players, but they don't have a standout wide receiver. So to see Elliott get in space was really nice to see. And on the other side of the ball, I thought Kerryon Johnson showed again that he's a really good running back. He has a good future in this league. He came off that 100-yard game. I know that he had 55 yards and a touchdown. This game, a couple really impressive runs that I saw him finishing runs, getting to the second level against linebackers and safeties and things like that. But definitely a game for the running backs.
Yeah. Well, Ezekiel Elliott also led his team in receiving with 88 yards receiving. He did catch 4 balls, and one of those was that long pass to one of those long passes to Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott passed to Ezekiel Elliott at the end of the game that led to the field goal for the win. So Ezekiel Elliott was the focal point in this offense, and he's going to be the focal point for the rest of the season, I believe. After a performance like this, it really shows why he's their top guy.
Yeah, 240 yards of total offense from your running back. That is usually a winning formula.
Yeah. And then going into New England against Miami. New England, all's right with the world again as New England beats Miami 38-7 after the loss to Detroit. So going into that game, this was just all Patriots the whole game, obviously from the score itself. But Brady had 274 yards passing with 3 touchdowns. He did throw 2 picks, but that was beyond the point.
Yeah, Dolphins came into this game 3-0, looking pretty impressive over the course of the first 3 weeks, and then the Patriots looking underwhelming to start the season, but a market correction game like we talked about before. I saw this coming. I kind of saw New England kind of, throwing around their weight a little bit and taking control of this game early on. They did, and now, it looks like it's their division again to lose.
Yeah, exactly. But also a big another rushing performance from Michelle from Georgia, the first-round pick the Patriots got, had 25 attempts, 112 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, he really impressed me on that game.
Yeah, him and, of course, James White catching the ball out of the backfield. And, now with Rex Burkhead going on IR, it's going to be those 2 guys for the Patriots backfield, too.
Well, White's always been their, receiving back, like Deion Lewis. Like, those were the 2, those were 2 of the opponent offense for Brady to throw to. But now with Michelle, you have an actual a threat at running back with also running the ball, not just receiving the ball.
Yeah, and even White had he catches a lot of passes, but he had 8 carries as well. So he touched the ball 15, 16 times in this game. So it's going to be that 1-2 punch I see for the Patriots for the rest of the season.
Right. And moving on to the Texans and the Colts. The Texans won in overtime, 37-34. We almost saw 2 ties this week. It's getting a little ridiculous how close we are getting to ties, though. We've had multiple almost ties this last 4 weeks.
So do you think if the Raiders and Browns had tied yesterday and the Colts and Texans had tied that the NFL would consider changing the overtime rules, after this season, if not earlier?
I think so. I'm not sure how that's going to go, but it's a toss-up. They might keep it. They might not. Who knows? I think they keep getting complaints about a lot of things, and I think this is one of those things they're just kind of going to ignore. That's my take on it. I don't see it as a thing that's going to continue as to be a problem. I think they're just going to get used to it.
Yeah, and talking about the Texans' 37-34 win over the Colts, the biggest thing that happened in that game was the Colts going for it on 4th and 4 from their own 43-yard line. They did not convert, which led to them losing the game. That's obviously a controversial play call by not punting the ball there. What are your thoughts on that?
If he got it, we would talk about this differently. That's how I see it.
When Belichick went for it a couple years ago.
Against the Colts in that playoff game. Absolutely. If he got that, then that's a brilliant play. If he doesn't get it, then he's becoming like this GOAT all of a sudden, and not in the good way. So looking at this, if he gets it, people were like, oh, I like the coach with guts. But since he didn't get it, everyone's like, oh, he's the worst coach. That's the dumbest decision I've ever seen. I would have done this differently, yada, yada, yada.
I agree with that. It's one of those decisions where you're going to be scrutinized or praised. It's not going to go overlooked. So if they converted there and then they go and win the game, then we're talking about, like you mentioned, how great of a play call that was, how gutsy, big, all those terms, right? But and I do think that NFL coaches in general don't go for it enough. They are too conservative. 4th and 1 at their own 40-yard line, for example, or those should be times where you go for it in a higher percentage than not. But we see conservative mindsets in NFL coaches, and so I do like the aggressiveness, but I'm not sure. 4th and 4 right there in overtime, I say punt the ball away, but. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, Frank Reich, this is his first head coaching job in the NFL, if I'm correct. And, I don't think he's that qualified to be a head coach in general. He did lead some comebacks when he was a professional football player for the Bills in that comeback 35-3 against the Oilers. Mm-hmm. And he set the largest comeback in college football history as well when playing for Maryland. But I don't know anything else that he's done that gives him a coaching job.
Yeah, and he said after the game that, we're not playing to tie. That was kind of his defense for going for it there, which I get it, but you set your team up to lose at the same time. So, yeah, you don't want to tie, but you certainly don't want to lose.
Yeah, would you take a tie or would you take a loss? I guess
especially a divisional game, you would definitely take a tie.
Yeah, absolutely. Just going on to the other games, the Eagles and Titans, that was 26-23, Titans win. The Eagles kind of beat themselves in this game at the end, when the Titans were driving down the field, down by 3 in the overtime. They had some costly penalties that eventually gave Titans the win.
Yeah, and you know what? I think kudos to the Titans. I think they deserve some respect after the last 2 games. They beat Jacksonville, and they beat Philadelphia. The defending Super Bowl champions.
Well, it feels like the Eagles kind of beat themselves in this game.
Yeah, I mean, you have a point, but the fact is that you look at their schedule before the season starts, you probably give them 2 losses in those 2 games. Mm-hmm. At best 1-1 to split with Philadelphia and Jacksonville, but and this game in particular, they come out with the win. I liked Corey Davis getting involved. He needs to be more involved for that team. He's an athletic freak, and Mariota found him 9 times, I believe, in this game, including the pivotal touchdown pass to win. So it was nice to see them win, but how they won. They got Corey Davis involved, and he makes that offense a lot more dynamic.
Yeah, definitely. And that his first touchdown grab was that game-winning touchdown in overtime. So that's pretty cool to say. But yeah, this is definitely a huge momentum shift for the Titans, but I still think this was Philadelphia's game to win, and they just blew it. They they had a fourth down, they stopped the fourth down, but then defensive holding call. So you look into all these things, and and they gave up multiple fourth downs. Besides that one holding call. So they should have had this game won. But I know what you're talking about by this team, the Titans. What you mean is that they can be a good team. They could be contender, which I agree with.
Yeah, and a lot of people forget that they made the playoffs last year. So, they're not a terrible team by any stretch. But, I see their season definitely ascending after these last 2 weeks.
We're going to take a short break. Kind of went a little over here in the first segment, but we'll get more into the Week 4 matchups in the next segment here. We might talk more about roughing the passer, who knows, but we'll be right back after this.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. We just talked about the Week 4 matchups. We're going to continue on into it. We're going to talk about the Jaguars and the Jets. This was all Jaguars through the whole game. 31-12 speaks for itself.
Yeah, not a lot of resistance provided by the Jets. It's a game I kind of saw coming. A rookie quarterback playing against that vaunted Jacksonville Jaguars defense. It was very tough for the Jets to move the ball. Obviously, we saw, Darnold 167 yards and a touchdown, Powell 26 yards. Not a lot of positive offensive stats by the Jets, and Bortles had a nice bounce back game.
Absolutely, he did, and it really showed. And I still see the Jaguars as the AFC South division champions by end season. I think a lot of people still do.
It's an interesting division now, with Andrew Luck back and Deshaun Watson healthy. It's a fun division. When you look at it top to bottom, I think it might be the most open, even though I agree with you that the Jaguars are set to be the most dominant
I think
team.
their just defense is what's going to put them over the top.
Yeah, absolutely. But, as we see, Bortles, he's been better the last 2 years. He's showing more consistency, but he's still not a guy you feel completely comfortable just saying this is a great team, right? Because he's not a great quarterback.
And what also helps is their jerseys look good now, and they don't have the half gold helmets anymore. I think they're a little more appealing to watch.
Yeah, that's definitely a positive step for them.
I like them. I personally like those jerseys. They have just simple is always the top for me.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, we saw the Jaguars. I mean, they played well. Yeldon played well. Again, Fournette got hurt, which that's starting to be a thing. I think he's like either injured or playing hurt all the time, it feels like. So,
Yeah, you're right on that one. He's always playing with something sore or something wrong.
It's a hamstring, it's an ankle, it's something. So, a guy like TJ Yeldon, it's nice that he's been able to step in and provide them not just a running option, but a passing option for Bortles. He scored again yesterday. So, good game for him. That's really all I have for that match.
Yeah. Next game we're going to talk about is the Buccaneers and Bears. This was all Bears all the way. Ryan Fitzpatrick struggled. Then Jameis Winston came in and struggled, continues. This Bears team, I feel like, is the real deal. Mitchell Trubisky had 6 touchdowns this game and 5 in the first half.
Yeah, I think the Fitz magic is officially gone. I think we'll see Winston start next game for Tampa Bay. But yes, Trubisky, He's had some inconsistent play to start the season. This was a breakout game for him. I think he set a Bears franchise record yesterday with touchdown passes. Just a great game for him. I don't really think he made too many tough throws. It looked like some really great play designs by the coaching staff. I am a big fan of Nagy as their head coach. He came over from the Chiefs. I thought that was a really good hire in the offseason. Really bright offensive mind, and it showed. They scored in different ways. It wasn't just targeting one receiver. We saw Trey Burton get loose and score a touchdown, which was nice to see. It was just a comprehensive effort by the Bears. We already know that their defense is going to be very good. And all of a sudden, you look at that division, and it's like the Packers are playing with a hobbled Aaron Rodgers. The Lions are as inconsistent as anybody. And then the Vikings are starting off terribly. They got to feel like they have an opportunity here.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Keyword is opportunity. We cannot say anything yet because it's only week 4 of the season. Let's give them a couple more weeks to see how they improve because they definitely still need improving.
Yeah.
And but they still have a very good chance of winning that North.
I mean, you look at the North right now. Chicago's at 3-1. Green Bay is at 2-1-1. Minnesota is at 1-2-1, and Detroit's 1-3. So Green Bay and Minnesota tying that game, it's kind of gives the Bears a little bit of comfort right now. I mean, you're looking at they still another couple wins in the next few weeks, maybe 2 or 3 wins in the next 3 or 4 games. Even if they play 500 ball until week 8, week 9 of the season, they're going to be in the mix.
Absolutely. And then going to the Ravens and Steelers game, it was a game. It was a Sunday night game, but I don't really have much to say about this game. The Ravens won 26-14. Flacco threw for 363 yards, 2 touchdowns, and Roethlisberger had 274 with 1 touchdown, 1 pick. But other than that, not much happened.
Yeah, the Ravens they're just a team that when they play well, they're still not very exciting. I mean, you got guys like Buck Allen and Alex Collins in their backfield. I mean, those are really 2 mundane running backs in the NFL. The Crabtree, Brown, and Snead on the outside. They just don't inspire like a lot of confidence, but Flacco had a good game. He quietly, I think, threw for that many yards, so it didn't feel like that.
Quietly was a perfect word to describe that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it was a game, right? Like it was. We always know what to expect from the Ravens and Steelers. We always know that it's going to be a tough physical matchup, and of course, the Ravens defense played better than the Steelers, and I think that was the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's all the games. And then we got the Chiefs and Broncos tonight on Monday Night Football. We have Patrick Mahomes, the hottest quarterback in the league at the moment with 13 touchdowns. And then we have the Case Keenum-led Broncos. Do you see the 3-0 Chiefs taking the loss in this, or do you see another win for them?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a solid game. I'd say somewhere like a 31-27 type score.
Wow, you think of big numbers.
I think that the Chiefs will win, but I wouldn't be shocked. I think more people will be surprised than I would if the Chiefs don't win this game. It is in Denver. It is at Mile High Stadium. It is a Monday night game, so I think the crowd will be ready. I think the Broncos will be fired up. I could see them kind of getting a lead early. The Chiefs' defense is terrible until further notice. Those defensive backs leave a lot of holes downfield, so I could see the Broncos coming out, maybe scoring a couple touchdowns early, and then the Chiefs kind of figuring it out and winning the game.
The Chiefs have been known for, Andy Reid teams, the Chiefs in general have been known for starting off hot and ending poorly. Last year is a perfect example.
Yes,
exactly.
Exactly.
5-0?
No. Yeah, I think they were the last team to lose last year. I think it was actually 6. Was it 6?
Maybe it was 6. I'm not entirely positive.
And then they kind of backed into the playoffs.
They barely made the playoffs. They barely won their division.
So. And they started off, not only did they start off so well in terms of picking up a lot of wins right off the bat, but they beat the Patriots in that first Thursday night game, which was, that was Kareem Hunt's coming out party where he went just off. Alex Smith went off. Tyreek Hill had a big game in that game. So, yes, the Chiefs are known for starting seasons very well.
Yeah. But the middle of the season is when they struggle the most. And I think it might be the beginning today. Who knows? But We'll see how they do. I say the Chiefs take this one. I think Patrick Mahomes, just against this Broncos defense, who's not the best. Von Miller is the only positive player on that team, I believe. And I just see Mahomes.
They have a lot of weapons. I mean, is there a team that has more collective group of weapons than the Chiefs?
No.
Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins.
Tyreek Hill is a top 4 running back, maybe even top 3. Kareem Hunt is still a stellar back. Mahomes has been playing well.
Kelsey might be the best tight end in the NFL.
Most
Gronk
likely,
or him,
yeah.
probably.
I would say Gronk, but Gronk gets injured too easily, in my opinion.
Yeah, so you have one of the best tight ends in the NFL who can go deep, who can catch anything short. You have Kareem Hunt, who is such a great all-around back. They haven't even used him in the passing game this year because they've had so many weapons on the outside. I mean, Sammy Watkins is their number 2.
If it's ain't broke, don't fix it. So why mess with the passing game?
Absolutely. Tyreek Hill is just... He's having a monster season. He was a monster last year, and that guy might be the fastest player in the NFL.
So we both got the Chiefs on this?
Yeah, I got the Chiefs 31-27.
All right, if I had to pick a score, give me 28-14.
28-14, you got Chiefs, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
I think it's going to be a big day.
I don't think that the Chiefs are going to limit 14 points. I just don't see it.
It's Case Keenum, so I'm not putting too much thought on that.
I guess we'll find out and we'll talk about it tomorrow.
I might get beef for that one. But we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the roughing the passer penalties and as well as who has the best momentum in the NFL right now. And we'll get right back on that when we return.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. We've talked about Week 4, the last 2 segments. Now we're going to get on to other matters at hand. I think roughing the passer is still one of the main topics of discussion when it coming to the professional level. Do you see a problem like this also in the college level?
I don't know. I think the roughing the passer stuff is... I've only noticed it in the NFL this year because obviously it's such a big topic.
They made it into a they made it more strict this season, definitely. But going into the roughing the passer, I just think maybe it's affecting the game definitely because players are now worried about sacking the quarterback rather than just going after him. I understand not putting your full weight on him can cause more injury than not, which is a problem. But I definitely think that you're reading into it too much.
Yeah, I think it's just a rule that's written in black and white when there's more nuance in the game. Like, you can't hit a quarterback low, and I get the understanding that you don't want to, take someone's ACL out, break someone's leg, but what if you're stumbling into the quarterback? Like, it's more than just like, oh, if you hit him low, it's a penalty, or if you hit him high, it's a penalty. Like, you have to take into account that there's 22 players on the field, and they're all affecting each other. So if a defensive end is coming around the edge and he gets a slight bump from a tackle who's beat, and it causes him to go high or low, we still see those players flagged for those penalties, no matter what their intentions were, and I think that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think it should be maybe worked out during the next off season. But we'll leave. We'll get away from NFL right now and go into college football. Very exciting games happened on Saturday, like Penn State versus Ohio State. That game was very good to watch, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a game that lived up to the billing. So Ohio State gets the win, big win, for Urban Meyer. Just a great game and a good result for college football.
Mm-hmm. Any other games that caught your eye in the college football world?
Yes. So Notre Dame taking care of business at home against Stanford in a very tight game, but in the second half they ran away with it. I know a lot of people picked Stanford to win. Myself, I thought that Notre Dame would actually win because they made that change at quarterback, going to Ian Book, who had a really, really, really good game. So it wasn't a close game at the end or maybe a memorable game, but it was a game that I feel like Notre Dame usually loses games against top opponents, but now we've seen them beat Michigan, we've seen them beat Stanford this year.
Do you see them as a contention for the college football playoff?
I don't think that they're that good. I don't put them in the same conversation as Alabama, Ohio State, a couple other teams, because I still think at the end of the day they're coached by Brian Kelly, and they always find a way to not, to underwhelm. They will lose this year. They won't be in the college football playoffs, in my opinion, but they'll at least maybe be in the conversation for a few more weeks.
I believe you just officially jinxed them to win the college national championship now, because that's how these things work.
Yeah, so everybody...
You say a team's not going to do well, or saying team's going to do well, and they just do the exact opposite of what you think. And if you say it out in public, then it's a jinx.
Yeah, so everybody should be placing their bets right now
on
Notre Dame.
Right now, yeah, that sounds about right. It's kind of funny when you see so many people like, oh, this team's going to win the national title, no question, and not the case at all. That happens on more often than not than people think. People usually pick Alabama, but they don't win it every year. They sometimes get upset. They've been to the playoff every year, I believe, and just shows that whatever you say, especially on a podcast that's listened to by people, or just you say it out in public, or on social media, it's more likely going to be the opposite, because that's just how experts pick their way. That's usually how it works.
Yeah.
Especially in college.
And and we look at the season, and I don't know. I just expect Alabama's going to be there at the end. I don't know if they're going to win or not, but I just penciled them in for the national championship.
Should we already mark Alabama out of the playoffs?
No. They're unjinxable in my opinion. They will be in the championship. They might not win. They could lose, but I mean,
Alabama losing? Who says these things?
Yeah,
that's people from Alabama.
You can put your money on them losing, but I will not be one of those people.
I don't blame people for Alabama thinking they can't lose. I mean, you've had a dynasty for so long now. I totally get it. And you know how much... And Alabama, if they had an NFL team, then I would say, maybe lay off the college team. But that's all you got. That's all you got. I totally get that.
Yeah, and we didn't see too much movement this weekend in college. I mean, all the top teams really won. The only top teams that lost to other top teams. So
they would drop 1 or 2 spots, maybe.
Right. So Penn State loses. They were number 9. They lose against Ohio State, who's number 4. They might drop a couple.
I'm
spots.
saying 12.
Yeah, that seems right. The teams.
I'll say Stanford goes to 9. They were 7, right?
So Stanford was 7. I'm
saying 9 or 10. You think they'd drop more?
Well, Notre Dame was 8, so obviously they'll swap. 9 was Penn State, so they'll move down too. So Stanford could fill in at 9. I don't know. You got Auburn at 10, who won against Southern Miss. Not overly impressive, but Washington also won. They're ranked 11, so you could be right there. Maybe they drop a little further.
And with Oregon beating 25 Cal, excuse me. Was it 24 or 25?
Cal was ranked 24th.
24th? Never mind then, sorry. But beating them, they'll probably move up a tad. They moved up even with their loss to Stanford, though. Did you see that? I've never seen that before. I've never seen a loss move a team up like that.
Yeah, but, it makes sense. Sometimes you lose to a really good team, and you shouldn't be penalized for that, right? Mm-hmm. So there are times where I think that, you definitely, just because you suffer a loss doesn't mean you should drop in the standings. In fact, you could even go higher. I mean, what if you're ranked like 25 and you take the number 1 team to overtime or something like that? Like, in my opinion, you should jump. You shouldn't lose.
True, but these rankings are pretty ruthless.
Yeah. I think we'll see, Washington with that win. They were 11. They beat a BYU team who was 20, and they took care of business. I mean, they handed them a pretty devastating loss. So we might see Washington jump in, maybe in the top 8.
Top 8? Oh, I could see that. And I could see Notre Dame taking maybe number 5 at highest with their win over Stanford.
Yeah, the problem is that none of the teams ahead of them lost. I mean, LSU is the current number 5. They beat,
but just beating another top 10 team puts you ahead of others.
Sure.
Because they faced unranked. A lot of them faced unranked teams. Like LSU faced Mississippi.
Mm-hmm. Oklahoma, they played Baylor. Number 6 Oklahoma beats Baylor 66-33.
Interesting score, to say the least.
Yeah, it's just that conference. It's
66-33. It's like literally double.
Sometimes Baylor and Oklahoma, I think their football teams can put up more points than their basketball teams could in a matchup.
It's pretty accurate, actually.
Some of those games that go into like double, triple overtime, they can get in like the 60s on both sides,
Oh my gosh.
Sometimes college basketball games are in the 50s, like real low scoring.
It's only two 20-minute halves. You don't much. It's 40 minutes. You don't have much time to do much compared to like the one at what it feels like. What is it? 12 minutes, 4 quarters.
Yes.
So 48 minutes.
Yeah, and then with the rules in college basketball, like the 1-and-1 and things like that, it makes scoring a little bit tighter.
Yeah, absolutely. But any other games that caught your eye in the college football world, or is the Stanford Notre Dame one the main one in your eyes?
I thought that was a good game. I mean, obviously the Ohio State Penn State game was the game of the week, in my opinion. But other than that, nothing really stood out too much. No big movers or shakers, in my opinion.
Okay, we're going to take a short break once again. When we get back, we'll talk about anything else related to football, and we'll get right back to that when we get back to you.
Cool.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. We've talked about Week 4 matchups, unnecessary roughness. We've talked about college football, headline matchups like Stanford and Notre Dame, as well as Ohio State and Penn State. Now we're going on to the final segment where we're going to talk about whatever we kind of feel like that's related to football. You wanted to talk about the the rookie quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Who do you say stands out as the top rookie quarterback right now?
Do you mean from this weekend or overall?
Just overall.
I'll go with Baker just because he's looked good so far and he hasn't hit that stumbling block. Of course, I expect him to, and I think that
all rookie quarterbacks do eventually.
Yeah, after teams get tape on them, after they play a few games and people start to figure out their tendencies, then they come back down to earth a little bit. And I think that's what we saw with guys like Josh Allen, Sam Darnold, and Josh Rosen had his first start, of course, this weekend too. He had a tough game. So I'm going to say Baker stands out right now. Very impressed with not just his numbers, but actually with his mechanics, with the way that the ball seems to zip exactly where he wants to go with it. He's putting the ball, putting passes into tight coverages, which is nice to see from a rookie.
Who would you say is the most disappointing?
It's hard to say at this point, considering Rosen hasn't played too much, but I'm gonna say Josh Allen.
Really?
I am. Even though they won against Minnesota, I think
he did struggle this week.
And I don't know if he was overly impressive against Minnesota. Their team played really well. Their defense created a lot of turnovers and short fields for him. And I thought he just did a caretaking type job managing the game in that win. Impressive win, great for him. But I don't know. He hasn't shown me anything that has changed the way that I perceived him coming out of college, which was a flawed quarterback mechanically. I think he'll definitely get better. He's looking better, but I still think he's a little bit behind the other quarterbacks in terms of mechanics, maybe reading coverages and things like that.
Okay. I think Sam Darnold is my disappointing one. Just he played really well against the Detroit and then just nothing the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And he's been disappointing to me, that is.
And, it's hard him playing against Jacksonville on the road. It's a tough defense. It may be the toughest defense for a quarterback to face. So it's hard to say. I give him a pass when it comes to that because he doesn't have the best weapons around him. He's definitely outmatched. A guy like Jalen Ramsey on the other side, A.J. Bouye. Those cornerbacks are, those are Pro Bowl caliber cornerbacks. And who are they covering? Robbie Anderson, Quincy Enunwa. I'll give Darnold a pass on that because he has shown the ability to play well previously, especially in week 1. But I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, and he's on the Jets, so that doesn't probably help him either. The Jets just around him, they have weapons, but just don't know how to utilize them. So I'll say that. All right, pick your offensive rookie of the year out of these guys right now.
Offensive rookie of the year so far of these 4?
Yeah. Let's just go early to premature prediction.
I have to go with Baker, even though he's played a game and a half at this point.
He did help a team win that hasn't won a game in over almost 2 calendar years.
In the game that he lost, his team put up 42 points. So that loss is, I know that after the game, it was actually a pretty professional thing to do by taking the blame for the loss, but the loss wasn't on him.
Yeah, it showed his character and showed his leadership, taking the blame for the loss. But it was kind of his defense. Well, I wouldn't say defense.
You gave up 45 points. I'm not putting that on the quarterback ever.
Yeah, but
he made a couple erratic throws. I remember
there was a lot that went wrong in that game.
Yeah, but
definitely a lot went wrong.
But he's shown a lot of promise, and I think Browns fans are probably very encouraged.
They haven't seen something like this in a long time. Positivity at the quarterback. You know that jersey that's in the window in the mannequin that's has the names almost hitting the ground. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. It's actually getting kind of ridiculous how big that list is going on from that jersey's from Tim Couch in 1999. So from now to now, that's at least 20 quarterbacks.
And I'd like to point out that this franchise spent a first-round draft pick on Brandon Weeden, who was
that's right.
Who was a 29-year-old college quarterback.
He played really well, that's granted. He played well in college, though.
But they spent a first-round draft pick on a quarterback.
It was
who was
late
about to turn
first.
30.
It was a late first.
Yes, it was.
But he also played very well in college.
I'll give you that.
He definitely was positive. But I understand. They also drafted Johnny Manziel.
Johnny Football.
He had problems from the beginning, just attitude and party wise, and I just feel like that wasn't gonna fly in the NFL, and it didn't.
It's a good thing that you brought that up because not only do Browns fans have to feel encouraged by Baker Mayfield's play, but a lot of the talk before the draft and even after was, oh, they're going to take another quarterback that's like Johnny Manziel, like they carry themselves similarly. And to see Baker Mayfield be professional, especially after yesterday's loss, I think, helps them feel better about the future with Baker Mayfield more than just his talent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did have attitude problems in Oklahoma, that's for certain. But the fact of the matter is he's playing very well. He feels like he's becoming a leader of the team, and like who knows what is the outcome of the season for the Browns. But speaking of the Browns, do you think Hugh Jackson should have been fired after after going 0-16 and 1-15?
I think it's incredible that Hugh Jackson still has a job. For sure. I mean, I understand that he took over a rebuilding type project, but it's actually
0-16, man.
It's actually more difficult, in my opinion, to lose that many games than to steal a win every once in a while. So, yeah, Hugh Jackson, I'm not a fan of his. I think that he will hamstring the team down the road, but the Browns have been playing better this year. They're at least a fun team to watch instead of just like you know what to expect, where they're going to get blown out and they're going to show nothing on offense. At least yesterday's loss felt like, okay, that's a building block type of game where our offense, we just put up 42 points on the road. Like that's a pretty good step. Now, of course, they need to fix the defense a little bit, but their defense had played very well against Pittsburgh, the Saints.
Well, that game against Pittsburgh, that was third stringers playing.
Yeah, but I mean, regardless, we have seen the Browns defense actually show up against good teams. So they have a lot of encouragement going forward.
Yeah. And I hope they do well one day. I hope they make the playoffs again. I think it'll be a good Browns team will be great for football, just so there's no laughing stock like that anymore. I think Cleveland's had enough of it, and I don't blame them.
It's also nice, too, that if the Browns can continue to be competitive, even when they lose, but play these exciting games that are close, that division is shaping up to be really good. I didn't expect to see the Bengals do so well right away, and, you know, if the Bengals and Browns can consistently play well on the road, like they both did pretty much yesterday, I would say, it's not just going to be easy for the Ravens and the Steelers I feel like it has been for quite some time.
Yeah, I can definitely see the Bengals taking that division. Definitely.
The Steelers just don't look like they're as formidable as they've been in the previous couple of years. Although, you know, it's 4 games. Like, we'll see what happens. You could say the same about New England. So
we still have 12 more games of the season to look at.
And I think that Le'Veon Bell will return, you know, like shortly, because they're not trading him. I don't think
they're already looking to trade him.
They're looking, but I don't think it's going to be very hard for a team to trade for him because they cannot negotiate a long-term deal with him during the season. So we're talking about a team giving up assets with no guarantee that he stays with them. That's a difficult proposition. If you're Pittsburgh, his trade value is a little bit limited because of that. I mean, there's no guarantee for a team that trades. What are you going to give up? Are you going to give up a first-round pick?
Well, they're asking for a second and a good player, quote-unquote good player.
Right. And we don't know what that really means. What is a good player?
A solid player?
They definitely need a corner. I will say they need some help on defense. You know, they're pretty good on the offensive side of the ball as of now. I don't know what kind of player
I'm
they're
trying to
looking
think
for.
right now what they can get for him, but I cannot think of anybody that's worth.
You know, you could see maybe a contending team paying the price to go for a championship. Maybe they'll pay to have 8 games of Le'Veon Bell. But I think it eliminates 2/3 of the league right away when they can't negotiate a contract, and then the requirement to get him is actually giving up a first or a second round or multiple second-round picks. Like, that's a lot.
I'll give just 1 second-round pick and a player for him. Depends on who the player is. If they want like a good defensive tackle, I probably could settle for that. But if it's like another offensive weapon or a major defensive weapon, it's gonna be hard to say yes or no to.
You know, the Rams try to trade for Khalil Mack. which is ridiculous. Maybe the Rams will try and trade for Le'Veon Bell. And
There's no way. They have Gurley. They're going to trust Gurley. If they trade for Bell, Gurley would feel a little cheated, in my opinion. It'd be like, I gave on the best running back in the league for you, and you still think you need another running back?
No, the Rams don't need another running back, but they also didn't need another pass rusher. And
you can never have enough pass rushers.
Yeah, I agree with that. But giving up a first or multiple first-round picks for half a season of Khalil Mack when you already have Aaron Donald and Sue on that defense, there's a lot of money being thrown on that defense there. But you never know. I'm not sure really who would be in the trade market for Le'Veon Bell. I'm not sure how big that market is. Okay.
Well, we're going to cut it off here for the day. We've talked about Week 4. We've talked about Ruffy the Passer. We've talked about college football and Penn State and Ohio State and Notre Dame and Stanford, all those top games. And we talked about the Cleveland Browns a little bit, and we finished off with talking about the Le'Veon Bell situation, which is still a situation, and who knows when that's going to end. But we will talk to you tomorrow.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.